Well, at the end of June this year, the Central West Orana RES transmission project, that is a renewable energy zone, received planning approval in what was an Australian first. Joining us on the line is the Mayor of Dubbo, Matthew Dickerson. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Janeen. How are you going?
Very well, thank you. I think not many people would actually fully understand just how large this renewable energy zone is, Matthew.
No, I think you're right. And one of the things that I think is a good stat to keep in mind is when this is finished being built out, which is probably 15 years away before it's completed, we'll be providing approximately 42% of the entire energy needs of the state. So that gives you some idea of the significance of the area. And it is a large physical area, a large number of square kilometres, but people will see wind turbines and solar panels as they drive around. They might see some batteries, they might even see some pumped hydro. But there's no doubt about it, this whole area will be a very important part of the transition to renewables, which is occurring already.
Well, the RES zone covers approximately 20,000 kilometres squared. It's looking at $20 billion in private investment in solar, wind and energy storage projects and supporting around 5,000 jobs during peak constructions. Can we firstly just start with what your thoughts are on the project?
Well, it's one of these things, Janeen, that we don't have a say in it. Local government is not the consent authority. We haven't created the renewable energy zone. And there are some people who are excited, some people who are unhappy about it. Council's got a bit of a challenge in that we can't say yes or no, so we can expend a lot of energy jumping up and down and saying no if we don't want it, or we can see how we can take advantage. The bottom line is, Janeen, that this is going to happen. There is every move from the state government, from the federal government to indicate that there's no stopping now. It's full steam ahead. So our challenge, the job that we've got to do on behalf of our community, is see how we can benefit from it. And I think there are a significant number of benefits that we can achieve on behalf of the community out of the renewable energy zone. And that's been this council's approach to it, is to see how we can take advantage of it, what extra things we can do, what innovative things can we do to try and make sure that we are beneficiaries of this, not just over the next 15 years of construction, but ongoing past that.
All right. Well, let's have a look at the positives firstly. What do you think that the project will do for the local economy and employment?
Well, you mentioned that number there of 5,000. We've done our own independent study, and with the RES and other projects that are happening around the area, we estimate that we'll need about 6,000 extra people over the next 7 years for this and other constructions that are going on, other jobs that are going on. So that's the first part. Obviously, a huge number of jobs. Then you start to look at what other benefits you can create. And again, some of this is about being a bit innovative. So one of the examples we had was one of the proponents, Squadron Energy, said that they needed some water for construction. They needed about 400 megalitres a year of for construction purposes. And that was over a 5-year period. When they talked to council about that, we said, you can go to the open market, you can buy the water you need, that's available as temporary water licences. You'd probably spend estimated maybe $700,000 for that amount of water. But we said that we've got 4 gigs of water that comes out of our sewage treatment plant each year that we send down to a farm that we grow crops. It's a farm that council owns that we grow crops on. But because we've got a reliable water supply there, albeit water that you can't use for construction, we said if you spent some money on a advanced wastewater treatment facility, you could then have a guarantee of that water and the Dubbo community would benefit. So they're now spending $3.6 million on an advanced wastewater treatment. They'll be able to have that guaranteed water for the 5 years that they need it for their construction. After that, Dubbo will have 700 megalitres of water each year that we'll be able to use on our sporting fields, which will then save all that water that's potable water that we currently use in those sporting fields. So you're looking always for different benefits that you can gain out of it. The other quick one, which I love to talk about, is the REACT Centre, the Renewable Energy Awareness and Career Training Centre. We believe there's an opportunity here for tourism. I look at the Parkes Telescope, 100,000 visitors a year. I look at the Snowy Hydro Scheme, 150,000 visitors a year. So we envisage a area that's a visitor centre, an education centre, but most importantly a career training centre, because these 6,000 employees, they need somewhere to be trained to do the work they need to do. So we've already got 4 of the proponents on board. They've given us $50,000 each to create a feasibility study for our React Centre. So they're the sort of things we're looking at to try and get long-term benefits for our community.
Mayor, what role will council play, if any, in actually dealing with community concerns around the environmental and visual impact of the projects?
It is a tough one. Again, we're not the consent authority in this, so we certainly talk to community members. We can make representations on behalf of community members, but the reality is these projects are larger than would be consented for by our council. So they go through a state significant development process. Effectively, it's the planning department of the New South Wales government. So the reality is the visual impacts, the environmental impacts, all of those are dealt with by the state government in terms of that planning process. So that's the challenge for us. People come to council with concerns, but the reality is we have very little to do with that process. It really is about how do we gain benefits for the community. So if people do have concerns about the visual impact, about any of the concerns about what might be happening with the construction phase, then really that's one of the things that they typically would take to the state government. Having said that, we play a part in, for example, identifying roads that might be used by the proponents, so we want to make sure the roads at an appropriate level to be able to support the construction that's required.
Tell me, what are your views on balancing renewable energy projects whilst endeavouring to preserve local landscapes and agricultural land?
The agricultural land's an interesting one. I love wind farms. Wind farms get installed. The farmers that have got those turbines on their farms have just drought-proofed their property, but they continue to farm that land pretty much as it was before because the actual wind turbines don't take up a lot of area on each of their farms. So there's a small pad that each wind turbine is on. But I've talked to some farmers with wind turbines, and some of these had these turbines back on their farms back in 2019 when we had obviously the last big drought. And they said that they had a guaranteed amount of money that was coming in. They knew every year that money was coming in. They could then hand feed or make decisions about their farm knowing that money was coming in. So it made those farmers better farmers because they had that guaranteed income. In terms of solar farms, it's a little bit different. With solar farms, obviously, you can't grow a wheat crop when you've got a solar farm there. But what you can do is still graze sheep. And there's some studies going on at the moment to see what number of sheep you can still graze on a farm that's got solar panels on it. And the number that's being talked about, and I don't have university studies to back this up yet, but about 70%. So you can probably carry about 70% of the sheep you used to be able to carry before. But in some circumstances, they're finding the wool quality is even better. So there's some more research to be done here. So that's certainly a challenge to balance the requirement for producing power with the requirement for us being able to have food. Keep in mind that farmers make decisions about solar farms and wind farms. They own the land and they can make decisions within the law that will benefit them in the best possible way. They might decide that canola's a good crop one year, wheat's a good crop the next year. They might decide that a wind farm or a solar farm is the best use of the land from their perspective. No one's making these farmers put a wind farm or a solar farm on there. They're choosing to do that.
All right. Matthew, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. It's going to be a very dynamic time, I think, for all of us living in the Central West over the next 10, 15 years. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Janeen. Always my pleasure.
Thank you. Matthew Dickerson there, the Mayor of Dubbo.